This is Dylan Kennan of Hell or High Water. You're listening to the Monday Morning Critic Podcast.
In the Wild West world of podcasting, there is one podcast that is authentic and genuine and continues to stand tall in its originality. Based on a passion for his guests, their work, and his love of podcasting, Derek Thomas and Monday Morning Critic Podcast get amazing, diverse, unique guests found nowhere else. The variety and quality are endless. There is something for everyone. Derek Thomas is the hero you deserve. He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector. Welcome to Monday Morning Critic Podcast. Here is Derek Thomas.
You know, the bank loan, just enough to keep your mama poor. Thought they could swipe her land.
It's a big bank.
It's too big. That's what she said.
Now they can foreclose on Friday. So come hell or high water,
Get the money to the bank on Thursday.
and then you are free and clear.
Little brother, let's go get that money.
Good morning, folks. Open the drawers.
You got a gun on you, old man?
You damn right I got a gun on me. Y'all gonna steal my gun, too?
We ain't stealing from you, we're stealing from the bank.
Woo!
You hear about these bank robberies? You may get to have some fun before they send you off to the rocking chair yet.
I may have one hunt left in me.
Mama, in that been a while?
3 months.
Bank breathing down her neck.
Everybody get on the ground!
Y'all been here for a while?
Long enough to watch the bank getting robbed has been robbing me for 30 years.
You managed to stay out of prison for a year. It's been difficult.
Tell them stand up!
These boys know exactly what they're doing. They're trying to raise a certain amount, that's my guess.
Let's go! Run! Run!
Toby, it's a good thing you're done.
We're doing it.
Every step of the way. You want a little advice? Go see your boys in the mall.
You know, you talk like we ain't gonna get away with this.
I've never met nobody got away with anything, ever.
Then why in the hell did you agree to do it?
Because you asked, little brother.
Mama, take this badge off of me.
I think I got these boys figured.
He's got no record. He's never been arrested. You don't fit the bill, Marcus.
You may be hearing a lot of things about me and your uncle.
It's getting dark, too dark to see.
Whatever I hear, I won't believe.
No, you believe it. I did all of it.
Feel like knocking on heaven's door.
Love you, Toby. Mean it. I love you, too.
You wanna get us killed? Huh?
I listened to your interview with Chris Browning, who happens to be a friend of mine, and I heard you talking about that, and I thought, well, that's fabulous. You know,
he's a funny guy. He's a funny guy, Chris. I like him.
Interesting dude, talented actor. What a life story.
And amazing life story. He goes from being homeless, and like, I didn't even know this. I mean, not that it's my business anyway, but he's dating Natasha Henstridge the entire time, and he never said, like, you think, you know, my wife or the person I'm seeing or whatever. I don't think he's married, but it's just kind of an, oh, by the way, right? She's just like this huge sci-fi actor. It's just, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's very humble about things. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just looking at it from a fanboy perspective. But,
right, of course.
You know,
I mean, you know, who's to say he'll play it pretty close to the vest, right? Why not?
Yeah, and he's such a great dad. You watch him on Instagram. He's so good with his kids. So it's just such a good dude.
Yeah. Solid dude.
Yeah, you guys are alike in some way. You guys have an awesome filmography. Like
he beat me out for the role in Book of Eli, and you know, well deserved because he killed it. And I can understand why they cast him. But we both have worked extensively locally in New Mexico, so our paths have crossed a bunch. He used to play baseball with a good buddy of mine, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not as if we're bosom buddies and call each other on the weekends, but I'm certainly well aware of his career and what he's doing and keeping, a loose tab on him. And it's always just impressive. And I'm always so happy because it seems like his path has not been the easiest one, but the more he climbs the ladder, the more awareness people have of him. It's just like everybody wins, so that's cool.
Yeah, man, that's well said. Yeah, he's a really good dude, and yeah, I think the world of him. He's a really nice guy. But let's get into your great life. I mean, all right, so you're born in New Mexico, right? Some really great iconic shows there. Breaking Bad shot there, Better Call Saul there. From the outside looking in, just seems like such a good looking place. My mother and her sister live in Nevada, and it reminds me very much of the layout and landscape. How long, Dylan, were you in New Mexico for?
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's all interchangeable. The Southwest, you can go West Texas, New Mexico, Nevada, Arizona, Southern Colorado, and you can get a piece of everything in there. I born and raised in New Mexico. Immediately at 18, graduated high school, went to college in Los Angeles, and I've been here ever since.
So I'm going to jump a little bit, okay? So
sure.
You BA. I feel like the internet, believe it or not, may not be completely reliable here. It says you got your BA in 95, but there's no way you're the same age as me. You're much more handsome. You're much younger than me.
Bless you. I graduated in 99, so I did start in 95 at USC, and that ages me quite a bit, unfortunately, but here we are.
No, but there's some interesting tidbits here, right? So I read something about ice hockey at USC. True or false?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the backstory on that is when we were kids, my brother and I and our group of friends, ranging from about ages 7 to 15, all told, used to shovel the ponds up at Christina Wilson's place in the winter and just, stick and puck, whatever. Fast forward, I was a senior in high school, and we had a sort of a house league, a farm league team, if you will. That we put together. Our parents and the local, very small town, mind you, city council had put together a skating rink in the middle of the park, in the middle of town in Kit Carson Park. And so we had a legitimate, illegitimate team, and I was the captain of it in high school. And then came to USC, where there is a club team, and we play the Pac-12 teams, and we travel across the nation for national tournaments. And I played hockey for 4 years at USC, which is astounding to most people because they can't even imagine ice in Southern California.
Yeah, but you say it's a club team, which I get, but like that's competitive, right? I mean, a lot of those Pac-10 teams,
For sure. There were guys on my team that, were only not in Division I hockey schools because they had also brains and they got a scholarship to USC or whatever. You know what I mean? They were not, they knew they weren't going to go on to play competitive professional hockey, but they were definitely competitive and professional level players. Not myself, obviously. I was just doing it for the fun of it. Like, I loved it.
Do you still play, or has it been a while?
No, it's been a minute. I used to go home and play Christmas time. By the way, my high school went on to be state champions like 7 years running. Directly after I graduated and left town, a billionaire moved to town and donated a bunch of money and put together a rec center with a skating rink. And they were off to the races. The high school now has one of the, the winningest records in, I guess it's not much to say the Southwest because you don't think of hockey, but it exists and the kids are good.
I was going to say the only thing more, thinking that there's hockey at USC is thinking that there's hockey in New Mexico, right? That's even
right, because
more.
Everybody sees Coyote and Roadrunner or Breaking Bad, and they're like, yeah, there's no hockey there. But in fact, in northern New Mexico in Taos, it's 7,000 feet base elevation where I grew up. So we get snow, we get freezing, we get lots of winter, and it's awesome.
Well, that's pretty awesome, man. That fact that you played ice hockey, really competitive. Also a couple other things I want to run by you before we kind of dive into your really successful acting career is being in a fraternity. When you look back at that, how do you look at that? Is that a time that you value? Was it not for you?
It was a really big world I dove into from my small town. Coming from a town of 6,000 people to a university of 25,000 people in a city of 12 million, I think I was pretty overwhelmed and just like kind of latched on to what seemed like an established social scene as best I could. Having it to do over again, I probably wouldn't go that route. But having said that, I've got some really great, really, long time, wonderful friends that I met in my time there, that I'm super, super grateful for and wouldn't trade for anything. So, you got to kind of take both sides of it. I'm not a huge supporter of the Greek system in a general way, but I certainly can give myself a little bit of leeway for the kid that I was, just, desperate to fit in and wanting to be friends with people. I'm still the same guy. I still am desperate to fit in and want to be friends with people.
Are you a big rear view mirror guy? You don't strike me as that. You don't strike me as somebody, well, you strike me as reflective, right? Because I do that almost to the point where it's not healthy, Dylan. I look back and I'm like, I would have changed my group of friends that I hung out, not entirely, but I would have made different choices early as a kid. But I guess that's the whole purpose for me of aging. When I look back, it's like, you now have learned from your mistakes. You kind of, I say that at 48 years old, but it's but are you that type of guy? Are you very reflective in that regard?
I have now a 3 going on 4-year meditation practice that I am very grateful for, giving me a little bit of, I hope, perspective on just how my mind works, giving me a little bit of grace in because I'm pretty hard on myself in a general way. So there are things, I have regrets. I'm always fascinated by people who live their life and say, yeah, no regrets, man. Everything made me who I am today. And I think, oh my gosh, I could list within 30 seconds a dozen things that I would absolutely go back and change about my experience, just because that's not a lesson I'm particularly happy to have learned.
Right.
But having said that, we are where we are, and moving forward is the only option. So I'm attempting in my new middle age to allow that it's okay to be where you are, and it's where you must start from. And with that in mind, you can accomplish a lot, and you can do a lot of good in the world and for yourself just by not beating yourself up on the what ifs and the, oh my gosh, I should have.
Yeah, that's well said. And, one of the things I was watching was First We Feast. It's a show where guests come on and they eat spicy buffalo wings. They kind of,
I love that.
Yeah, it's great. So I thought about you because I thought I read where you were a carpenter. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is perfect. So I thought that was true. So I was watching Jeremy Renner, and one of the things Jeremy Renner does, or might still do, I'm not sure, he builds houses and then sells them. He's not a flipper, but he really builds these like extravagant houses, and then he sells them. Do you still do carpentry for as a source of income, or do you use it
mostly more? I do carpentry now for all of my friends who don't own any tools at all and don't actually have practical skills. They call me up once a week and be like, hey man, this door isn't hanging right. Is there any chance I could get you to come over Thursday? I'll buy you lunch. Which is, it's this story of my life, and it's anybody that owns a pickup truck can relate to how many friends they have that move. It's just like, as soon as you've got one of those practical skills, and I rely on people too, for whatever it is that they do that I don't do. I've got an attorney friend that I call up and I'm like, hey, I need some contract advice, and usually they will bear with me through whatever my menial question is, just to be a friend, just like I will for anybody that calls me up. Generally, I'll come over and fix something or set something up with my various tools, because it's part of my personality. But thankfully, in this moment, it's no longer part of my income, and it's not something that I'm my tools are not rusty. They are there, and they're in good shape in case it ever comes back to that. But I am so fortunate and blessed in this moment not to be having to do that for a living. I'm very grateful to report that I did that for about 10 or 12 years professionally to keep the lights on, so to speak.
Yep.
And was able to transition out of that into just, focusing full time on the industry. And that's something I wouldn't trade, that the real world sort of experience of having to earn a living with your hands is really gratifying on a certain level. And
yeah, so, man. And had you not been such a successful actor, you had a really good, you had a solid parachute there, right? You had a good, I mean, and I guess we
still do.
Yeah, you still do. That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
I mean, I appreciate you. That's twice you've said successful actor, and my only thought is like, I wonder where my next meal is coming from. But that's great that I certainly aspire to that.
I mean, if I went to any acting school with any or acting coach, and I said, "Well, this is this man's filmography. This is what he's done," I would say literally 100% of the people in that school would jump at what you're doing now. So I would say you're at a place where 98% of actors are not. And I can say that safely from having done research and interviewed a ton of people, casting directors. From this amateur Bush League podcast host point of view, I honestly believe that most actors would give their liver to be where you are today.
Bless you, man, and thank you, and compliment taken and note taken as well, because absolutely that's a fact. And I have been super fortunate to have been able to piecemeal my career together to the point where it looks like I've never stopped working. How could you have 90 credits or something like that and ever take a breath?
Yeah.
But the fact is that there are big gaps of time where I have to engage, the other faculties to keep myself sane in between jobs. And that's every actor would tell you that. And it doesn't matter what level they're at. They'll all tell you that. My best friends who are movie stars and television stars also have that exact experience. So I don't think I'm unique in that. And I'm really grateful to be of among the working in this profession, because it is such a decision. It's a choice.
Yeah. Yep. My last non-acting related question. Your Twitter handle says sandwich enthusiast. So if I said to you, Dylan, you can only have one more sandwich and then we're cutting you off for good, what's that sandwich going to be?
Oh man, great question. Oh boy, I'm gonna go with a Mission Street from the Heights Deli in Lincoln Heights, down east of Los Angeles. They do this incredible like buffalo chicken, bacon, avocado situation toasted. Oh man, yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah, that's pretty.
A sandwich is destined to be my last meal.
That's pretty impressive. And what else is impressive is I love reading these stories, and I always think Spielberg when I hear these type of situations. Right, so you're a kid who, and this is off of IMDb, who had the VHS making movies as a kid with your brother and friends. Clearly, like, you're passionate, like this is one of those born to, you were born with your passion. You knew what you wanted to do at an early age. So talk about that part of it, but also tell me, Dylan, what are the movies that really sparked you as a kid? Because I know this is a very common answer. It's very, people ask it all the time, but it's a very telling answer, right? What you're going to tell me now is very telling about what really moves you. So in my opinion, that makes for a very listenable podcast. So that's
fabulous, Derek. I appreciate that question as well, man. And you probably have heard this answer before, because it was a pretty startling moment in my experience when I saw The Right Stuff as a kid, and I was so into it. I was so moved by it, and I couldn't have been 7 when it came out, and I thought, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to be an astronaut. I'm going to space. I'm going to, and I spent some time really, it was around that kindergarten age when they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm going to be an astronaut. I also thought I wanted to be a chef, and my parents were like, well, how's that going to work? I'll be the one cooking pancakes in the place on the moon. I'll figure it out. And it wasn't for a while thereafter that I realized, oh my God, that's a movie. I don't want to be an astronaut. I want to be an actor. I want to be the person that does that for a living. And I was fortunate enough many years later to be working on a movie with Ed Harris and to kind of, I got to relate that story to him, and he took it in just the spirit that it was meant, because obviously, you know, he was a hero to me as a kid, and I was pretty blown away to have that. You know, they say never meet your heroes, but he holds up. I can tell you without reservation that the man is just quality stuff. He's a fabulous actor and a good human being, and it is really a pleasure to work with him and watch him work.
Yeah, you talk about Gone Baby Gone. What an actor he is, and that's kind of tough because you have to maintain your professionalism, which I'm sure you did. But it's also like this is the guy that kind of ignites your passion for acting. So it's kind of like, you know what I'm saying? It's a. I mean, like I said, I'm sure you're very professional, but I think about how I would be. It's a very kind of tricky slope. I think a little bit. I mean, because some actors would be like, oh, great, like. I had an actor on who was in something with Denzel, and he says there's a list that Denzel gives them of, you know, the Denzel rules, things you do, things you don't do. So you know, everyone has their own little thing. But for me to hear that from you is like so awesome. Like I loved Ed Harris before. I love him even more now. Yeah,
absolutely. He's the guy you hope he would be. I mean, actually, and I hope this isn't divulging too much information at his expense, but it was after a fairly long day of shooting, especially for him, because obviously he's the lead of the movie that we were doing, Sweetwater, which it's hard to get your hands on. Went to Sundance in 2013, but it wasn't the great movie that everybody hoped it was going to be necessarily. Although the directors had a vision, and Ed Harris gives this knockout performance. And so he happened to be college buddies and roommates with a friend of mine who's a local in New Mexico, great actor named Luce Rains. And so that was kind of my introduction to Ed. And anyway, after shooting a long day one day, Ed kind of stepped out of his trailer and he said, "Hey, man, you want to smoke a bowl?" And that was... I was just like, you know, outwardly like, yeah, man, that sounds great. And inwardly like, oh, my God, this is a personal hero of mine, not only acknowledging my existence, but inviting me to come like share his space and take in a little bit of a native ritual ceremony. And that was super fun. And that's when I told him that story. And
that must have made you really hungry for pancakes that you wanted to
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Totally.
Yeah.
I'm sure I ate the whole restaurant that night.
Yeah, and you know the other impressive thing that I can't believe I kind of glossed over was the National Merit Scholarship to USC, right? That's pretty huge.
Yeah, that ended up being pretty important because I was planning to go to Northwestern, and they had already accepted me. Like a pre-acceptance, because I was a good student and I had a bunch of extracurricular stuff, and at the time that all mattered to colleges, and so I had a mentor, and he said, "Here's what you do, kid. You go to USC, you get a degree in acting, and then you stay there, and the rest is history." And of course, it wasn't quite that simple, but as soon as he said that to me, I started applying and was lucky enough to, get the last deadline submission in like midnight. I remember this vividly, getting my submission in on, you remember dial-up computers and all that. And like, it was a real heartache because I realized that was the route I wanted to go, and only at the last minute under the wire. And then they came back with money for me to go school there because, of course, it's an incredibly expensive school. And so they did offer me, their dean scholarship, which was made it feasible.
And USC, I got to admit, from hearing you talk, is got to be huge in your life as far as the actor you are today played a huge part. I mean, just hearing you talk, I can tell, right?
Absolutely. And, for me, and I think, speaking to anybody who is of an age they're deciding what to do with themselves, university or college, it's not about what you learn specifically in school there. It's about going and becoming an adult and fending for yourself to a certain degree where you're not going to drown, but you have to learn to swim. And that's what it was for me. So the acting training that I got there was fine. It was certainly passable for a theater degree at that time, but it didn't even scratch the surface of what I needed to know as an actor professionally. But what it did is it gave me a great friend group. It gave me a jumping off point. It gave me time to, for my the butterflies to get out of my stomach and the cobwebs to get out of my head from youth into young manhood. And that's where it was of great service. Like, I don't think that anybody needs, quote unquote, needs college to be a successful person, but it is a wonderful proving ground for people to become human beings, right? For kids to become humans. I think that's what it's good for.
Yeah, I agree. And are you a Second City guy?
Did I do Second City? I think I did Second City. I think I did 3 levels of Second City. Wow. It was either that or Groundlings.
Yeah,
somewhere in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's if you found it somewhere that you read that, then that's probably what it was.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive too. Yeah,
it was a ways back, but I've done a lot of sporadic improv training because I just think it's really important as a human being and as an actor to be able to think on your feet and to be able to think within the kind of the confines of a given circumstance. And yeah, improv training all the way. I think it's one of the more helpful things an actor can do for themselves.
You did something with a Star Wars. It was 30 minutes.
Okay, that was an incredible opportunity that came of being from USC because, of course, George Lucas was a Trojan, and it had this connection to a generation before me at USC, wrote the entire first 3 movies trilogy into a 30-minute play. Jesus. And took it to the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh. So I was on the 3rd or 4th season of that, and I ended up having the opportunity to play Darth Vader, who is double cast with Chewbacca. So I did my all this.
That's great.
It was so much fun. You couldn't do better as an entertainer, an actor, than to have that wave of drunken breath wash over you as the curtains open and a full packed house of Scots screaming at midnight on a Friday night for their favorite entertainment. There's nothing like it in the world.
So they meshed the 3 original Star Wars movies together into a 30-minute a performance.
It's a 30-minute mad dash, hilarious, because there's nothing particularly funny about Star Wars. Except if you cut out all of the dead space and, double cast characters and put folding chairs over people's heads to be TIE fighters and use wiffle ball bats to be lightsabers and then just, crash through the thing. Sometimes as many as 3 times a day for these, like I said, the midnight shows were amazing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And your filmography for those listening includes Sicario, Hell or High Water, Only the Brave, Those Who Wish Me Dead, The Magnificent Seven, Let Me In, very underrated Let Me In, A Million Ways to Die in the West, The Orville. I'm going to kind of talk about this in a second, but let me ask you, so you've done some soaps, you've done TV, you've done movies. Is it all the same, Dylan, in the approach? Is the acting all the same? Or is it kind of you have to adjust differently for each? A soap is done this way. A TV, and I know movies are obviously shot different. I get that part of it. But as an actor, from a presentation point of view, from an entertainer's point of view, are soaps, television, and movies handled differently?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a great question, and I feel like it might deserve a better answer than I can give it. But from my perspective, my job is to go and play as convincing a game of pretend as I possibly can, right? And it doesn't matter what the medium is. It's just that each medium has its own parameters for how you do it. That is to say that in a movie, you've probably got a much more languid process about getting all of your moments on film, where in a soap opera, for example, you have one chance to do it, and maybe two if you're really lucky or something goes terribly wrong. But they're not, you are expected to know exactly what you're doing as you do it. And in a movie, there's room to discover what you're doing as you do it. And I don't know if that makes sense to
makes
all your
perfect
listeners,
sense.
but, but I think, ultimately my job is the same. Show up on time, know your words, and then pretend you're somebody different and make it convincing. And it's a very simple thing to do conceptually, and it's an incredibly intricate thing to do very well.
Is when you miss, is the lingo for actors, is it called going down on your lines where you don't know your lines or you mess up? Is that the correct terminology?
Going up, actually.
Going up on your line. Okay, going up. Yeah, go up on your line. So Larry, it's funny that you're from New Mexico, because Larry Hankin, who was in Seinfeld, and I think he's Joe in Breaking Bad. I guess Bryan Cranston got really upset because he kept going up on his lines. He kept and he's like, all right, enough art. Like, he was like really upset, but he's such a good guy. He was nice about it. But do you see that a lot in your travels? Do you see people it's like, come on, man. Like, it's normal to mess up once in a while, but there's a difference between messing up and being unprepared,
I'll tell you a story I don't think I've shared yet. Very recently, I was on set with James Samuel directing The Harder They Fall, starring Idris Elba and
great.
Regina King. Yep. And like this, it was such an honor and a privilege to be there in the first place. But as we were kind of got onto set, and I not to talk out of school or out of turn or anything, like I kind of know how the process goes at this point. So I've got my pages in front of me, the sides, the dailies, the mini sides, the little sides that they print for you so you can just refer to them as needed. And I'm holding them in my hand as we and this includes Miss King, and we're walking through what the shot will be. And it's my turn to speak, and I kind of look down at the words to make sure, because I'm working with a now Academy Award-winning actress, and I'm on a big set, and I just don't want to screw this up. So I'm looking down at the page to make sure I know exactly where I am, kind of thing. And I look up, and the director leans into me, and he says, "You better know those words."
Jesus.
And I said, "I do, sir. Not a problem." And I did, but I just, this is like one of those comfort things that I do on set, is I walk on set with my page in hand, just so that I don't ever have to think about it. It's like a security blanket that obviously is not entirely necessary. It's Dumbo's feather type of thing.
Yeah.
But when he saw that on set, it made him nervous that I wasn't going to be ready. And, this is a multi-million-dollar production. I'm sure they're spending at this point $1 million a day on what they're doing. And they can't afford to be held up by, Joe Schmo, who walks in off the set or onto the set for 3 or 5 days, whatever I was there for. So from his perspective, I certainly understood that. But in terms of my preparation and not wanting to go up on my lines, I had them there just to make sure I was stone cold ready when the actual camera started rolling.
Yeah, and no pressure there after what he said. Like, I would have been flustered after he said that. I mean, me, not you. But, how do you – I mean, and I've asked this before, but I don't know how actors do it, especially you. I don't know how it's done. I mean, to know all that – is it like memorization? Is it like hearing a song lyric over and over again? Like, what – it's the one part of acting that amazes me to no end, and I still, after being a movie fan for all this time, I still don't know how you do it. I still don't.
And I think that's probably one of those number one type questions that actors get, and it's also sort of funny from the perspective of anybody that's been doing it for a long time, because it's sort of the last concern, which is to say, if you have done your homework and you've done your investigation into your, emotional life and the circumstances surrounding whatever you're doing, and the reason that your character is in this, predicament in the first place, and everything, that you have to really deeply consider to show up and give a compelling performance, the lines. The lines is the last thing that you're worried. I'm much more worried about how my wardrobe fits and what props I have to use and who's actually going to be working, opposite me than whatever it is that's coming out of my mouth, because that's going to be sort of second nature. So the memorization thing it's almost a misnomer that that's hard to do. It's actually, if you were yourself, Derek, to give yourself a page of dialogue to learn, and you had 2 days to do it, and you had all of these circumstances around it and what was motivating you to do it and why you were there in the first place, it would suddenly become much easier for you to actually complete that task, as opposed to like just walking in and being like, oh my God, I have to say all this stuff. Because it's the why of you saying it that really matters. It's not the what of your saying. Like, and in fact, you'll find this all the time with a great movie. What they're saying is most often a subterfuge for what they mean. So it's what you mean that matters, and then what you actually say gets to be kind of a fun thing layered on top of it.
So Dylan, is it word for word, or can you is there a little leniency in how you approach it, right? Do you have to be word for word exactly?
I was trained in a theater school where it's word for word, and it has become very difficult for me to get out of that. As a professional, you will find that there are hierarchies as to how much leeway anybody is given, and certainly in a scripted network television show, you're expected as a guest performer to come on and know your words as they are written. But if you are the series regular on that same television show and you say, yeah, I don't want to say y'all, I want to say you guys, and I don't want to talk about this thing again, I want to say something else here, the writers will say, oh yeah, okay, let me fix that. So of course that's for TV. In the movies, it really depends on the movie. I understood that the Coen brothers wrote every man that the dude said. So every time you think it looks like improv, because he's just saying man, and this is a great actor, of course, that Jeff Bridges is able to make every single one of those mans look like it's coming out of his mouth and not coming off of a script. But I believe they wrote their movie to be spoken word for word. And again, that's their movie. If you do a Will Ferrell movie, and I haven't had the opportunity, unfortunately, I can't wait. Will, if you're listening, I believe that there's probably a lot of improv and a lot of, circumstance-driven dialogue that makes the comedy pop, because that's just how they work, and how to get them the biggest laugh is the game there.
It's funny that you say that, because it's like I'm getting memories coming back to me. You mentioned the Coen brothers, and I had a guest, Wayne Duvall, who was in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And he plays the head of the KKK. But like he said, when he had that script, it was like he speaks in like a broken Southern drawl. Like I'm not even going to try it because I'll embarrass myself. But but he said in the script it was broken up like phonetically like that by the Coen. So I mean, I guess that adds credence to what you just said.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. And in the case of the Coen brothers, I read for their shoot, I'm losing the name of it recently, but it was and also another Jeff Bridges, Rooster Cogburn. What is that called? Coen brothers movie. Doesn't
I'll figure it out.
The title is not the point of the story. Is just that when I auditioned for that picture, the dialogue was almost indecipherable.
True Grit.
Yeah. Thank you, Derek. Well done. It was so old timey, old West, and the note obviously from casting was word for word perfect. Which is if you're reading for a Coen Brothers perfect or movie, you can assume that you need to be perfect about the language, and lo and behold, what they printed. I'm devastated I didn't get that job, but what they the movie that came out was word for word what they wrote, and as it should be. And as it is in plays. In the theater, you are expected to know every comma. I mean, there's no room for improv in scripted plays.
Right.
And I think that's sort of that's where my training all came from. So that's where my reverence for the writer and for the written word comes from. And any more I maintain that reverence for writers because I think it's magic and I think it's alchemy and I think it's so fabulous what writers do. But I also, appreciate that everybody's got something to bring to the table in this collaborative art. And if you've got a suggestion in the right context, hopefully it will be heard by the right people that will allow, the elevation of the whole project.
Yeah. And I'm looking at your career here, just putting some things together. A Million Ways to Die in the West, really funny movie. The Orville, 2 Seth MacFarlane projects. So Captain Heroes, we'll talk about that in a second. But that's like unlike anything you've done, which I have to believe as an actor is super fun. So let me ask you: is it a coincidence that these were both? Because I feel like going through your life, which I did, and I almost sound like a stalker here, but like I feel like these connections exist in a lot of different places, right? I don't know if it's I have to believe it's your ability. It's also I feel like some sort of networking or something because you're with him on 2 major projects like that. The Orville's, it's got a huge following to it. So is it just completely random that this one unfolded that way?
It was so it's so funny because they say work begets work, and certainly I believe that. And the one A Million Ways to Die in the West was a movie shot in New Mexico that I was cast in there. And the Orville obviously shoots on Fox Lot in Los Angeles, or what was the Fox Lot in Los Angeles. And it was a different agency, a different casting director. So the process of getting there, until I was actually in the room with Seth, I'm certain that he didn't put it together that I was a person that he knew. Mm-hmm. And so then, it just so happened that it was the callbacks happened for that picture, for that role, the first episode of the Orville, the pilot episode. The callbacks were the day after the 2016 election. And I walked in and a lot of, as you probably know, Seth MacFarlane was no friend of our former president. Mm-hmm. And I walked into that room and people were sort of in a dour mood, and I clocked that immediately and I said, well, at least we can make some television, and I got a little bit of a chuckle, and he looked up and he went, I know you. And I said, yeah, you do. And I'm glad you know it, And then the audition went the way it went, and I didn't get the part I was auditioning for, but they did call back and say, why don't you come and play something else for us, and we'll see if we can't get you in later on again.
Awesome, yeah.
And there's a guy who you say the script exactly as written.
Yeah, and
he is an exacting professional.
And the amount of time he puts in, because he's such a comedic genius, like he's just so bright with what he does. But that's a fun part for you, huh, Captain Heroes? Unlike anything, right? You're kind of that's like when you were when I talked about the kid with the VHS camera. That's the part you're kind of envisioning, right? When you're
yeah. Oh man, absolutely. So when I was a kid, we got this gigantic VHS machine, and my brother and I were into skateboarding. Now it's dirt roads where I grew up, right? Mm-hmm. So we wanted to skateboard, but there was nothing to skateboard on. So we kind of had a few sheets of plywood, and my dad had poured us a kind of a concrete ramp, and we were making, like, Rad had just come out, and maybe Gleaming the Cube was on the horizon, something like this. It was, and we were doing our sort of VHS reenactments of The Godfather and skater movies and daytime talk shows with friends of mine. And they were all just hilarious. It's just a hoot. But the seriousness with which the endeavor went down when we took it on, like it was just pure imagination. And it was so looking back on it, of course, I see it as formative. Like at the time, I was just like, "This is what we're doing." It was little kids' enthusiasm, which I think if you can get back to that, you're probably doing okay. And I think Seth MacFarlane has that. He's got the little kid's enthusiasm for what he does.
Yeah, and it gleams, you mentioned Rad. What an underrated movie that is.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I think it's being remade.
Everything seems to be, but I got to tell you, that's something that should not be forgotten. That's a fantastic movie from the 80s.
Yeah, well, that's us, you and I, showing our age because we both can have been fully influenced by that movie, and still, it's it's an icon that's forgotten by so many.
So I want to go into two movies before I let you go. I won't keep you forever. First of which is Sicario. What an unbelievably awesome movie. Before I get into a couple of scenes I love from you, I'd never heard of this director and screenwriter. You talk about a dream team. Holy cow, Denis Villeneuve and Taylor Sheridan. I mean, yeah. So when I talk about your acting ability, Exhibit A is Sicario. Like, all right, so I mean, that team will never I shouldn't say never work again, but they're two legitimate directors. Never mind a director and a screenwriter it's just unbelievable, right? From that standpoint alone.
So, I mean, that was, I didn't know it at the time, right? So I got cast in that movie, and then I went back and started watching Denis Villeneuve's movies, and I went, oh my God, what is this? And this being Taylor's first film that was produced, nobody knew who he was except for the cop on Sons of Anarchy. And I met Taylor for the first time on the set of Sicario, when he was just visiting for a day. And it was the day that we were going to go, kind of down into the caves and confront the Mexican mafia. And the whole set was in a hangar at the studios. And he happened to be on set, and I was just kind of hanging around, maybe craft service, grabbing a cup of coffee. And he came by and he said, "Hey, I'm Taylor Sheridan." I said, "Oh, wow. It's it's a pleasure to meet you. This script is incredible." And he said, "Yeah, you're playing the part I wrote for myself."
Wow.
And I said, "Well, it's an honor, and I'm grateful, and it's nice to meet you." And that was the first and last I heard from him for years.
Wow.
So obviously at that point I knew who Denny was, and it was the whole, like, probably to this day, one of the greatest experiences of my life working on that movie. But fast forward to Hell or High Water, and now I just came back. That was shot outside of Albuquerque, what we were doing. And I got back into Los Angeles. My friends picked me up from the airport. We went to get a bite to eat. And my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. And I picked it up. And this is Dylan. Dylan, Taylor Sheridan, look, man, I got to talk to you. And he spent a half an hour telling me how great my work was as the roadblock trooper in Hell or High Water. And this is a once in a lifetime experience, I got to say, because at that point I knew that he was going places, and just by virtue of the work that he had already put in, and much less, I had no idea what he was going to become, but I just knew he was somebody to pay close attention to. And he really kind of tried to take me under his wing and give me a shot. He put me with my manager, who is still my manager, introduced me to him, and ensured that we would work together again, and we have a couple of times since. And he's, if you have a friend like that, it's something that you don't take for granted, but you also can't, it's not like he's going to return my phone call.
Right.
He's the busiest man in Hollywood. I don't expect anything from him, but anytime that, his name comes up in conversation, I have the opportunity to be like, yeah, we get along. And I'm always grateful to do whatever he's doing, because it's going to be interesting, and it's going to have a sort of a valid and current perspective.
And it's unbelievable, because he goes from Sicario to Hell or High Water to Wind River. I mean, I don't think find me a screenwriter with back to back epic written projects like that. It's almost unheard of.
And I think he wrote, Hell or High Water or Wind River was first, and then Sicario was second, and then I think he finished with Hell or High Water, but those were his new American Western trilogy.
Yeah.
And if you look at them, you recognize that they all very much follow a certain Western format, and they do have, I mean, this is a certifiable genius of writing we're talking about, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, genius is right. Yeah.
He that was one of the rougher experiences that I had, was when he called me up and told me, I'm doing this movie. It's called Wind River, and I'm going to name a character Dylan, and I want you to play it. And then I thought, well, that's settled. Amazing. My career is, I never have to worry about it again. And then fast forward to that role, went to your friend, Matt Del Negro.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
Who is another tremendous actor, and I got to give him props for what he did, because when I went into audition for this role, I really was bringing nuance, and I was bringing, sort of a dark intelligence into a place where Taylor was like, no, man, don't do that. I need you to come out guns a-blazing. And it just was a turn for me that I couldn't take on the audition floor. And it's a big regret, but it is also an interesting lesson in, like, sort of pre-imagining the outcome of a circumstance, of a theatrical circumstance. That is to say, I thought I knew what the character was doing, and I really didn't. And when it becomes clear what was happening, it was just too late. Matt did a great job with it, and the movie is amazing. And, I've worked with Taylor since, so I don't think there's any love lost there. But it was, I was crestfallen when that turned in. He had sent me the script and said, read for Dylan. This is going to be great. You're going to do swell. We'll have a blast. And then I had a bunch of other things on my plate at the time, and it turned out that role was just not to be mine.
Yeah, and there's a great scene, and before we leave Sicario, there's a great scene where, there's a lot of great scenes, but where you're getting everyone ready, and you're right next to Josh Brolin. Boy, it's just that, I mean, is a set like that because of the, you're looking at Cartel, it's a very dark, you're not really sure who's good anymore, right? It's kind of got that, skewed image to it.
Mm-hmm.
Is a set like that? Can you feel, Denis? I'm sure Denis is as real as they come when it comes to directing. Can you sense that the atmosphere there is like, all right, there's no BSing here. Like, I'm sure there's some sets where there's leeway, this and that.
Man, I'm not even sure which element of that question to touch on, but everybody that was on my Delta team was either active reserve or in the military currently and on leave somehow.
Wow.
Like they were not messing around with any part of it.
Wow.
The whole, the whole production front to back was tonally what you see on the screen. I don't know if that makes sense, but like there was no fooling around on the set. There was nobody nobody showed up late, everybody showed up ready to work all the time. And it was pretty inspiring to see. And of course, just kind of standing off to the side and watching Denny and Roger Deakins discuss how they were going to set things up. And like that scene that you're talking about where we're prepping to go, and I'm telling Emily and Daniel to just stay in the back and keep it safe. And we had rehearsed that conversation and we had set up all the cameras, but that could only be filmed for 1 hour, basically 45 minutes at the end of the day so they had done, 5 hours of prep and setup to get that shot because Roger needed the light to be exactly where it was when we were filming. So there was a lot of pressure in that sense in that moment. Like it was a high pressure, just, get this done, move on, get this done, move on. Don't come in, half cocked on this one. And it paid off, I think, because the whole movie is just so tense. It's just such a tense film. It just from the front to the back, you're like, wow, I didn't realize I'd taken no breaths for 2 hours.
Yeah, and like I said, I think we see movies different because you're in there, it's your profession. But like working with Josh Brolin, I met him at a Comic-Con in Seattle a few years back. Emily Blunt. These are the best of the best, right? So I don't know. When you're in a movie like that, right? So earlier you talked about your buddies, how they ask you to come over once in a while and help fix this or help fix that. Do your buddies acknowledge how impressive the work you do on screen is? Do they ever talk about that? Do they ever say, I'm sure they ask you like, hey, how's so and so, or
mind you, my buddies are not necessarily unsuccessful people.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And to a person, they're, generally I could think of a lot of them as more successful in the film and television world than I am. So there's the professional acknowledgement of everybody's work. We all support each other definitely, and everybody's pulling for everybody else to have a good experience and a great career. But, occasionally there is room for, and especially in that movie in particular, like, that just happened to be the confluence of so many incredible forces coming together that I just feel lucky to be a part of it. I'm not in any way like under the impression that it's a great movie because I was there. It's a great movie because it's Denny's movie and because it's Roger's movie and because it's absolutely Emily's movie and it is Emily's movie and because it's Josh's movie and they were all very gracious and very kind and very accommodating to my presence on the set. And I certainly did my best to just, be a professional in return, but I got to act opposite Josh Brolin by virtue of being, incredibly fortunate as all I can think about that. And they are all, consummate professionals. And so I think that they all take so much pride and so much care in their work that it just is somewhat inevitable that it comes out that way.
Yeah, and not to mention the movie scored by the late Johan Johansson, who's freaking unbelievable, and probably the Babe Ruth of cinematographers, Roger Deakins.
He definitely is. Yeah,
it's pretty much so. I have Lois Lowry. She's the author who wrote Number of the Stars, The Giver. She was on a couple of years ago, and we're talking. And one of my last questions is, Lois, have you seen a movie that you love or is blowing you away? She goes, I have to tell you, Hell or High Water is one of the best movies I've ever. Something along those lines. She was glowing. Do you get that a lot with this? Because I feel like what a tough year that was, 2017 Academy Awards, right? You have Moonlight, Arrival, Fences, Hacksaw Ridge, Hell or High Water, Hidden Figures, Lion. My God, I would be stuck in this category, right? But I got to tell you, push comes to shove, Hell or High Water is the best movie of that year. It is.
I appreciate you saying so and certainly appreciate anybody that thinks so. And once again, it turns out that I've done a couple of movies with Chris and I had the opportunity to mention to him recently just that somebody, it was Mark Boone Jr. came up to me and said, you're in one of my favorite movies of all time. No, my favorite movie of all time. and I looked him in the eye and I said, Hell or High Water? And he said, yeah. Because it just, again, through no virtue of my participation, but just the fact of the David Mackenzie directing so well the tone that Taylor Sheridan had written. And then you've got two guys who could be brothers in real life in Ben Foster and Chris Pine playing across from each other and each one of them just being so note perfect in every moment. And then, you know, Jeff Bridges and Gil Birmingham, like just like names that you're so lucky to be on a set with, much less to have all of the pieces congeal in that way. Like I'm just really grateful. I'm super tickled that movie is what it is, because it is certainly something people kind of recognize from my resume. And if you watch the movie, I feel like my moment in there is just exactly what it was meant to be. But it's not like because of something great that I did. It's just when everything is set up for you to succeed like that, all you have to go in and is just not fuck it up. Just show up and don't screw it up, and you'll be fine. And that's what happened. Like, Taylor's script is so tight, and David Mackenzie gave everybody exactly enough room to do what they did. And then who's the cinematographer is Giles something. But he's great. And he gave me a note, which I didn't take. And I suffer for it to this day. If you ever watch that scene that I'm in, where I come up to Chris's car and I'm bringing him back his driver's license, and I do this kind of banana walk so I can look, you know, around into the back of the car. And Giles came up to me and was like, look, man, I really need you to kind of just make that walk wider. Now, for me, as the cop in the circumstance, I just couldn't justify it. I couldn't take my eyes off of this suspect. I couldn't walk further out of my way to get to where I was going. And and when I watched the movie, and this crushes me to this day, when I watched the movie, my reflection is in his side window as I'm coming up to the car. And it's this incredible Western shot. And you can see, if you watch the movie, you'll see what Giles was going for and where I kind of cut him off at the knees as a, you know, quote unquote, you know, realistic actor. And he didn't explain perfectly to me what he needed in that moment, but he did try to give me a chance to give him the best shot he could get. And I don't want to end on this note of my failure as an actor, but it really is it's a collaborative art. And you got to really defer to the people that know what they're doing to be taking care of you, just like I'm trying to take care of the script, and I'm trying to take care of my other actors, and I'm trying to take care of the director's vision. The cinematographer was trying to take care of me, and he was, you know, he was doing it if I had just let him. And you'll see, it's not a big moment, but it is this really lovely shot of my reflection in the rear, in the back windows. And you can just imagine if I had done exactly what he said, that it would have been that much cooler.
Yeah. And people think about cinematographers, they think about epic landscapes, but it's like the little things that you're talking about here. Like, yeah, he was trying to get, and that's such a great story. Two quick questions. Chris Pine, pretty amazing. You know, do you guys have a lot of dialogue in that scene, or how that's going to unfold? Or is that pretty much, you know, here's the lines, let's do our thing? Or do you guys kind of have a little interplay off camera with that?
We got to mess around with that, you know, rehearse it off camera and figure out how it was going to go before we were actually shooting.
The end of that movie is, I mean, Shawshank for me is on a pedestal. It's the movie, but this ending is pretty damn close. Like, just the way it ends, right? It's the way it morally plays out, right? Each character kind of justifying their belief and their stance. What was your take when you saw this movie for the final, you know, when it was all edited in the final go? Were you blown away like I was?
Yeah, I really was. And, you know, I'd had the advantage of reading the script for months beforehand and being on the set and knowing what they were generally putting together. But I nonetheless was just blown away by the final result. And you know, again, it comes down to all these incredible pieces being put into place with Jeff Bridges and Chris and Ben, and the story itself, and the director being who he is. And it was just one of those cinematic moments that you are hoping for always, right? Like this is always the goal, and sometimes it comes and most times it doesn't, but you go back up to bat hoping that you're going to connect in that way. And it's one of those things that just keeps you playing the game.
Yeah. Let Me In, by the way, very underrated movie too. What's around the corner for you, my friend? What's coming up? Anything you want to throw out there?
Oh man. Well, I've got a short film that's just making its way into festivals called In Broad Daylight, by some really talented Latin Hispanic filmmakers, sort of up and coming young guys. They've got a picture on HBO right now, which is called Slipping into Darkness. You can see it there.
Nice.
It's and I'm just really excited to be in it. Honestly, since I can't remember when, it's just the most fun I've had being on a set because these people are all so enthusiastic and so invested in what they're doing. And I haven't seen it yet, but I can't wait because it's a sort of, it's certainly the proving ground for a feature film. But as far as short films go, it's the one that I've been in that I feel like has the most potential impact about Los Angeles County sheriffs and about some obviously very current in the news things that have happened over the last year and a half that need to be addressed, nationwide. I'm not particularly interested in giving my own political philosophy, because I think that can kind of just limit me in terms of what my playing space is. But I love what these guys are doing. So I'm very excited. That's coming out at the official Latino Film Festival will be the first place it's viewed, and then crossing my fingers that it goes to a bunch of other festivals. And then aside from that, I've been doing some writing, trying to take charge of my own, experience in this moment. And I have a Canadian production company is interested in in optioning this concept for a reality charity show that I've been developing with a friend of mine for a long time. And I really am in love with the concept of people turning on their TV, and just by virtue of the television being on, they are doing net good in the world, instead of, television being a cultural drain. I think there's a somewhat untapped potential there for us to be using our powers for the forces of good, and I think this concept has legs, and I'm super tickled that somebody besides me also thinks so, that a production company says, yeah, let's see how far we can take this. And I'm only being cagey about how to talk about it because it is so close to development right now that
no, I get it.
I don't know what I should say or shouldn't say, but I'm really excited to be pushing that forward. And as it becomes a reality, certainly you'll know, I'll let you know, and we'll be pumping it out to the world at large, because I think that everybody is constantly starved for a way to make a difference and impact, some kind of do some good. And I think that in this like reality TV era that we're in, we're being bombarded with the kind of me voice. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think that's just like the loudest and first voice that comes on, because it's a natural thing for that to happen. But the next voice could be us, or them. And we might be able to, do something useful.
Yeah, man, that is so well said, because I got to tell you, a lot of the TV that's on, whether it's my wife or somebody else watching it, it's so about, me. It's just everything, not my wife, but what we watch, it's what she watches. It's like, oh, this kind of show again. Like, it's like, yeah, man, I'm so curious to hear what you're talking about. I can't.
Yeah, the celebrity home makeover shows are engaging and entertaining, but they are also a certain level of garbage. And
yes.
And a lot of the TV that I watch, the Succession, etc., White Lotus, etc., Breaking Bad, etc., like this is all really artistically done and fulfilling on that level, but also it is sort of we're stuck in a certain kind of rut.
Well, if this goes to that next level, I hope you come back on and talk about it.
Yeah, I would love to, man. Derek, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. I really appreciate you inviting me on board.
Thank you for listening to Derek Thomas and Monday Morning Critic Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, you can also connect with Monday Morning Critic on Instagram and Facebook, MDM Critic on Twitter, subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever podcasts are found. All episodes available, www.mmcpodcast.com.